Well, thank you everybody for joining us today for our industry update. As always, please mute your lines and use the chat feature, and please be sure to address it to everyone so that Melissa and John can see the questions. We are recording this. This will be sent out to all participants who are on and have registered, and it will be posted up on our website. And with that, John, I'm going to turn.
Thank you, Hope, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to this week's industry update, which will be presented by Melissa Bova. And I'm delighted that you've had an opportunity to join us. I will remind you that today's information is designed for the benefit and purpose of our restaurant, hotel, travel and tourism, lodging, and other members and friends of PRLA. It is off the record. It's not designed for press purposes. And if you're with the press, please disconnect, check back with us later, and we'd be happy to talk with you about any issues that are on your mind. And with that, I'd be delighted to introduce Melissa Bova.
Good morning, everyone. We have lots to unpack today. And don't worry, there will be plenty of commentary along the way. Let's just go into the biggest stuff, which is probably federal more than everything, but though Philadelphia threw us a few zingers yesterday that we will also talk about as well. Last week was not a good week for our country. I think everybody can agree on that. And we faced, I think, a disappointing experience and some disappointing experiences along the way. So we have seen kind of a shift in terms of Congress. We had the Georgia elections last week. I talked about it on the webinar last week. We thought before the elections that the Republicans would hold the U.S. Senate. I don't think anybody should be surprised that the Senate is now in Democratic control after the rhetoric and some of the things that have been happening around the country. And the people spoke, and now we will be entering a Congress that is in full Democratic control. So we have a House that's controlled by the Democrats. The U.S. Senate will have Kamala Harris as the tie-breaking vote. And of course, we will have President Biden, who will be sworn in next week. So I want to go through kind of the good and the things that we need to be cognizant of with the new administration, and then some things we also just need to be aware of. One of the good parts about all of this is that typically, and we've seen this, is that Democrats in control tend to be more favorable in terms of helping the economy and doing bailouts and getting out that trillions of dollars that's needed to really help people get through COVID. So we do expect a large recovery package to happen within the new Biden administration. We do expect Restaurants Act, which is one of PRLA's top priorities, to be part of a federal package. It's a $120 billion package specifically to the restaurant industry. We expect billions of dollars to be part of that package for state and local governments. This is important because we are looking at multi-billion-dollar deficits at the state level and large deficits at the local level. And what happens when you have deficits? You raise taxes. What industry pays more taxes than us? No industry pays more taxes than us. So that is really going to help balance the budget, and those funds coming down from the federal government is going to be helpful on that end. For my tourism friends, we have seen in Democratic administrations that they are more open to funding and supporting tourism and Brand USA and international travel, and seeing the return on investment that comes from that. So we're hopeful that a new administration is going to help on the tourism front. The other side of things, we have talked a lot in the past about some legislation that the U.S. House passed in this past session. It included a $15 minimum wage. It included elimination of the tipped wage. It included the PRO Act, which was kind of a pro-union, unionization piece of legislation. All of these are items that the U.S. Senate will not be there as a backstop to stop from moving forward or to negotiate for us. So all of kind of those things that we've been watching and keeping an eye on are things that are going to gain traction and could potentially pass within a new Congress. So within our national associations, the National Restaurant Association, the American Hotel and Lodging Association, and even within PRLA, we are going to have to change tracks, and we need to recognize, the will of the people and the people that they elected and their priorities, and work through that and find compromises that will help our industry continue to be successful, while also recognizing that politically disagreements are going to happen and we may not win as much as we have in the past when we did have that Senate backstop. So that's kind of where we are. We do expect the Biden administration to move quickly. We do expect them to focus primarily on COVID in the beginning, but those labor items are going to be items that are going to pop up over the coming months going into this new administration. Healthcare is going to be something that's going to pop up. So everything you've been hearing about are items that they're going to be able to move more quickly and efficiently than they could have if the Senate stayed in Republican control. Just an FYI on the impact of rulemaking, I did mention this rule last week. As an FYI, the Department of Labor has released a rule that has been a long priority of our industry. It was a correction of the 80-20 rule for my restaurants that are familiar with that, where your workers, there used to be a firm line that they could not spend more than 20% of their time doing non-tipped work. The Department of Labor recognized that there needs to be a little bit of leniency there. So that rule was slated and is slated as of right now to go into effect. And then another item for a lot of our restaurants on the call is that if you pay your employees minimum wage or more, so you don't take a tip credit, you would be able to tip pool between front and back of the house employees. Previously, under the Obama administration, they drew a hard line saying you could not tip pool between front and back of the house no matter what. Department of Labor released a final rule that's supposed to be posted in the next few weeks, but it will be posted within a new administration. So while those are items that the industry has long been advocating for, we don't expect the Biden administration to be as receptive to them. So we expect both of those to be pulled back. So I know many of you have reached out and talked to me about how these are priorities. And while we were this close to checking the box on some of those, we do expect them to be pulled back within the new administration. So from there, what should you be focusing on right now? And that is the PPP. Every single person on this call right now should be applying or have applied for your first or your second round of PPP. If you were a first round applicant, you were able to start applying on the 11th, so on Monday of this week. And then if you were a second round applicant filing through a smaller, more regional bank, you have been able to start filing your applications. And then all applications will be accepted by the end of the week. So if you have not started filling out your application for your PPP, you need to do so. We have seen the money run out quickly. Now that we don't expect it to run out as quickly this time, because as we've said, you do have to prove a 25% loss in your gross receipts. So all of those people that yanked the PPP away from people that actually needed it before will no longer be eligible. So it will only be those that are truly impacted by the COVID crisis. And further, for those that have 72 at the beginning of your NCIS code, which is really the restaurant and hotel industry, you will be able to apply for 3.5 times your payroll, as opposed to everybody else being able to apply for 2.5. I know I'm going to get questions, so I'm not going to do too much of a deep dive right now. But you should be looking at that, and you should be reaching out to your banks to see if they're even processing PPP. It does seem, and we're hearing, fewer banks are accepting PPP than they did before. I should just call it P3 because I'm getting sick of saying PPP. So fewer banks than before are accepting P3. So check with your bank because if they don't, you'll need to find another one. So please, and all of that does run through your bank. This is not an SBA thing. The banks are the ones that process these. So make sure that you are looking at that. As an FYI, because I've gotten this question a few times, if you have to have had spent your first round of P3, but you do not need to have it forgiven to apply for the second round. So that's really key here. So you do not need to have your first round forgiven before you apply for your second. So that shouldn't be a hurdle for any of you right now. And then of course I will take questions on all of that. Probably that's going to be the basis of the questions when we get to the end of the call. And then also, just as an FYI, they did expand the spending. So that 40% spend that you could do before is now broader, and you can use it for supplies and other items. So they have made it better. And then I will add this one last thing, and then I'll stop offering random P3 facts, is for those of you that received that $10,000 EIDL kind of grant-free money in the first round, and you also got the P3, when you applied for forgiveness, if you had, you were told that you would have to pay back the $10,000, that it would be deducted from the P3. That has been changed. So if you did receive that $10,000 grant, that no longer needs to be paid back if you got the P3. I know that's a question that we got from a number of you. And then we will open it up and I will answer any specific questions when we get to the end of the webinar. And we did have a webinar on Friday that many of you did participate in. We had so many questions that we're still weeding through. So if you were on that webinar and you didn't get an answer, if you could shoot that question in this chat box, I will attempt to make sure I answer it today. Okay, so we thought, well, to be honest, last week I was like, the state is a mess. And then the feds were like, hold my beer. But we're working through some of the state issues that have been coming up over the last now 9 days. The 2021-22 state legislative session is underway. We did have all the hullabaloo that we talked about last week in the state Senate, where the Republicans didn't want to seat Senator Brewster. They wanted to see how a court ruling played out. The court ruled yesterday and said that Senator Brewster did win the 45th district. So the Senate is going to swear in Senator Brewster. Actually, they are doing it literally as I speak, if they haven't done it already, because the Senate is coming in at 11 a.m. To swear him in as the senator for the 45th district. So from that, we will finally start to see some of our committee assignments and everything we've been waiting for from the Senate. So hopefully that will help us move forward from some of the partisan politics that played out in the Senate last week. At least that's what we're hoping. But that is being addressed today. He is being sworn in. So we do have a full Senate. And then in the House, we have 202 members. And there will be a special election for Representative Mike, who passed away suddenly a few weeks ago. So that special session has been scheduled for the primary day. Committee chairs, as I mentioned, the Senate has not announced committee chairs or committee assignments yet. And I did mention this a little bit last week. Any bill that PRLA moves, if we want to move it standalone, it has to go through a committee, or even if we want to amend it, it has to be amended in a committee. So committee chairs and committees are really important for our association. We do have our House committee chairs. They're out there, not a ton of changes, which I had mentioned. We do have some consistency across all of that, except as I mentioned last week, a change in the tourism committee and the minority chair. But all of those are being announced, as I said, this week and next week. And from there, we will be moving forward in terms of getting co-sponsors and sponsors for PRLA's legislative priorities and activating all of you in terms of reaching out to legislators about our legislative priorities. So we will be including committee lists. You guys have spent, and whether you wanted to or not, really over the past 11 months, this industry has never been more engaged with legislative officials, and it's awesome, and we can't stop. And that engagement needs to continue through COVID and beyond COVID, because that engagement is really what's holding them to the fire in terms of supporting our industry. And PRLA, as I mentioned before, is not pursuing a partisan recovery plan. We believe that our industry is bipartisan and we need that support from everybody. So for all of you that were reaching out to your legislators last year, continue the conversations with them, continue to reach out, continue to talk about priorities, and we'll be putting together a grassroots plan, as I mentioned, I think last week, over the coming weeks to really help activate and move forward with what this industry is going to need. We are not going to be, not that I was ever very forgiving after some of the votes last session, but I'm going to be even less forgiving now. And I think the industry as a whole needs to be less forgiving for legislators that don't stand up for us right now. Next slide. Philadelphia. Oh, golly. So I don't even know where to go with Philadelphia. So Philadelphia did announce, so that step forward, baby step forward. Commissioner Farley did announce yesterday that they're going to allow indoor dining to resume on January 16th. all of you, the rest of you in the 66 other counties have been back to 50% since January 4th. Philadelphia has been shut down since then. We are still waiting for the specific, mysterious definition of what seating capacity is, but Philadelphia has decided that restaurants can open at 25% of seating capacity, not maximum capacity. And what we think, if Ben and I were to put our heads together and try and get in the heads of Dr. Farley, which is a scary place to be, it would be taking how many seats you would have in your dining room normally, which is difficult because you've reduced your dining room capacity to 50%, but taking those seats and making it 25% of that. So that's the question is 25% of seating capacity when you were at 100% before, or is it 25% of when you were at 50%, which is the highest you've been since COVID started? And you would be like, I don't know, Melissa, which one is it? And I would say, I don't know either, because they haven't told us yet. So we hope to have that within the next day or two. But that's Philadelphia's new mysterious item for right now. And they also are looking within Philadelphia to increase ventilation and have more requirements there that PRLA is working through, as I mentioned last week, to make sure there's no extra cost. Further, for Philadelphia, the 4 people per table from the same household is still in effect. That is for indoor and outdoor dining. No, you do not need to check driver's licenses and make sure they're from the same household, but it is a standard that they have out there. And also as a reminder, since it's been since December or November, since you had indoor seating, for my Philadelphia friends, you need a face mask and a shield for your employees that are front facing with guests in Philadelphia. Indoor events are still prohibited. I've said I do not know when Dr. Farley is going to get the bee out of his bonnet on indoor events, but there's like a hive of bees in his bonnet as it pertains to indoor events right now. So he is still prohibiting any type of indoor event. Next steps, and this is the question, this is probably the question that we get more than any other, and we have asked the administration more than any other, when will, and I think I got this question, when are they going to allow catered events? When are they going to allow us to go to 50%? And that is not even, I think, a thought process that they're engaging yet, or something that they're willing to discuss right now. But there is an acknowledgement, and we had a meeting yesterday where some of our catering friends really spoke up to the Commerce Department, and we are also speaking up to the fact that by shutting down indoor events, I mean, restaurants have it bad, and hotels have it bad, but those catering companies and those hotels that do a lot of events they can't even operate at all right now. And the city needs to acknowledge that, and acknowledge that if we can't have events, people are going to go to the suburbs and they're going to have it in their homes, which we all know is not a safe way to have those events. So we are working with the city of Philadelphia on next steps. I don't have an answer as to when they're going to allow next steps. I think it's going to be based on vaccinations and case counts. Okay, statewide mitigation. Case counts we're watching, they're increased. Yesterday we had about 7,700. Today is usually the day that we see a higher number because it takes a while for the weekend numbers to come through. So we're keeping an eye on that, but generally, we are plugging along. There has been no talk. I'm going to answer this question because this is the other question I get more than any other. There has been no conversations within the administration about shutting down restaurants for Super Bowl Sunday or Valentine's Day right now. I don't see it at this point, especially because the Steelers, well, we won't talk about the Steelers, but I don't see an issue for Super Bowl, and I really don't see an issue for Valentine's Day, because quite frankly, if you're going out to dinner on Valentine's Day, it's with somebody in your household anyway. So, or with somebody that you probably were going to be in close contact with no matter what. So those are rumors. There's nothing being discussed internally on those fronts. So I got ahead of all of you on that question. But statewide, just as a reminder, because I have had to look things up, I feel like we all went into a brain fog during the 3 weeks they shut us down, because I've had to recheck all of the rules. 50% indoor public dining if you self-certify, 25% indoor dining if you don't. Events are at 10%. And events are where we keep on getting confused, because we were at 50%, then 25 people, then we were at 25, it was everywhere. 10% for indoor events. And then all the other rules are still in place across the state. The 11 p.m. last call, drinks have to be cleared by midnight. You need to order chicken fingers with your beer so you don't get COVID, and then no bar seating. That's going to be the next question you're all going to ask me, is when is that going to be changed? Again, it's going to be based on case counts and vaccinations. And if case counts go down, I think we have an opportunity to continue to push for that. I did have a question yesterday about events. When will events go up from 10%? I think we could see a potential increase. I don't think we're going to be back to any type of 50% for indoor events before the spring. I don't see a budging on that. That's just my gut. But we are going to continue to push. And now that the legislature is back in session, we can continue to have those conversations. Vaccine update. So all kinds of updates this week. Let's talk about the state and where we are right now. The state has restaurant workers right now in 1C. That is after emergency responders, also after food service workers, which we'll talk about. That's where restaurant workers right now are at the state level. Hotel workers are not currently listed anywhere in the state vaccination plan, which means our hotel employees would fall in the general public vaccination plan. We have requested a meeting with the Department of Health for a few reasons. One is that we feel that restaurant and hotel workers should be in Section 1B of the vaccination plan. They've been saying for months that we're all the problems and the events are the problems and restaurants are the problems, which while we're not, but if they want to say we are, then we should be bumped up in vaccinations. And also for my hotels, I mean, you were emergency response. I mean, you were an essential business during all of this. Many of you stepped up to house COVID patients, to be there in various cities, and there's no reason why you shouldn't be in 1B. So we're going to be talking with the state shortly about getting the restaurant and hotel industry bumped up to 1B in the state plan, and hopefully we'll make some progress there. In Philadelphia, you're in 1B, which was a really pleasant surprise yesterday when Dr. Farley talked about the vaccination plans in Philadelphia. So it does look like restaurants and hotel workers are in 1B within the city of Philadelphia. And I say that separately because the way the vaccines are working right now is that all of Pennsylvania has a vaccination plan, and then Philadelphia can create its own because it's a large city. And that's why we have two different standards based on whether you are in the state of Pennsylvania or specifically within the city of Philadelphia. The other question I'm getting about vaccines is, do you have to live in the state of Pennsylvania to get a vaccination in Pennsylvania or Philadelphia for that matter? And they're not checking to see where you live. They want to get vaccines out as quickly as possible. So you do not need to prove residency to get a vaccine in Pennsylvania. And I don't think in any of the other states as well. I don't know any state that's requiring a proof of residency. Oh, good, I'm done. Okay, go ahead, Hope.
You're done, but probably not for that long. So take a breath. We will be back next week, as always, with another industry update. Today, AHLA will be hosting a webinar with H Careers, and they're going to be working on presenting some information to you about how to build the best strategy for rehiring, retaining, and optimizing your recruiting in 2021 with the workers and with what your status is at your hotel or restaurant. Again, coming up on the 14th is the restaurant resilience, talking about the off-premise challenges and engaging a changed customer. And then on the 21st, we are going to be having best presenting to us about combating human trafficking in hospitality. They're going to be talking about the importance of training, discussing best practices, and talking about the training that is available, that is for free for all of our members, for your employees and for yourself, to help with the prevention of human trafficking. So please join us next week on the 21st. As always, Carry Out PA is a vital piece for you to be advertising what you are offering to consumers so that they understand your hours, if you're takeout, dining, how to order. And HARP, we are in the midst of awarding grants, but we are still accepting donations. Please, as a restaurateur, reach out to your customers and ask them as a way of supporting our industry to contribute to HARP through text to donate or on our website. Next slide. Training solutions. Make sure that you're making sure that all your employees are coming back, or that you have someone certified on staff for ServSafe or for food certification requirement. They will be checking this when they come in too. So make sure that that is in place. And that, in conjunction with ServSafe dining commitment, which we've been talking about, is a powerful way for the restaurants to establish trust with the patrons that are concerned about dining out. And these training solutions work in conjunction with the dining commitment. So please take a look at that. There are remote proctoring offerings through ServSafe now. If you have questions about ServSafe, reach out to me at the office. My email is hsterner@prla.org. And with that, I think it's back to you.
I'm ready. I heard you say that you must apply by end of the week for P3. Is that correct? My bank is still considering doing this again. No, you do not need to apply this week. It's just when applications are open. And we don't know how quickly the funds will run out. As I mentioned, there is the requirement that people actually show a gross receipt loss to apply. So you can start applying as early as this week. You do not need to apply as early as this week. But that's if you want the funds sooner than later and you want to apply. Do we have any idea of when indoor catered events will be allowed in Philadelphia? All of our spring events are getting antsy, and I'd love to give them solid answers. I do think that we have our good friend Joshua from the city's Commerce Department on the call. So as soon as they get an answer, we'll let you know. But we did ask them that question yesterday, and a lot of it is just based on case counts. And Philadelphia still has high case counts, so they're not giving us an answer on indoor catered events. Now, you can have some outdoor catered events, but indoor, we do not have an answer yet. And I think Ben did answer this question. There was a closing time in Philly yet. Philadelphia does have 11 p.m. last call, and restaurants need to be closed by midnight in Philadelphia. Any updates on outdoor events in Philadelphia, specifically those held at private venues? We need to double check, and Ben can fill in if I'm wrong. I think outdoor events is 25 people for outdoor catered events. I believe that's the cap for outdoor catered events, and Ben can throw in the chat if I'm wrong. But that's probably part of the problem. And I'll say this for my friends from Philadelphia that are on here now. A lot of the documents are still based off of the current shutdown orders. So they haven't been updated to reflect kind of the more detailed changes that are coming from the announcement that's this week. So I'm sure that I was going through them earlier. I feel like there's 6 different documents for our industry in Philadelphia. So they are updating those. For our restaurants, has there been guidance on how to operate successfully at a reduced capacity? Maybe a best practices guide on what works. Listen, I'm happy to help in any way that I can when talking to the state on being on 1B. Our innkeepers have been asking. Yeah, it's going to be, I mean, Carl, to that end, it's going to be the administration and the Department of Health that will determine a bump up to 1B. And I think we have had a few webinars that we might be able to throw in the chat about getting creative in terms of using your space with the 25 or 50% capacity, however you're operating. Indoor events at 10%, thought it was 20% based on the square footage prior to reverting back to 10 people. Indoor events in the state, in the 66 counties, is at 10% right now. 20% was before they knocked it down to 10%, which was in November, October. It is at 10% right now, unfortunately. Which is the same as not having anything, which I think is the intention. Are restaurants in Philadelphia allowed to have scheduled entertainment starting Saturday? We have not seen any changes regarding the entertainment. And Philadelphia does allow entertainment. Now, you can't, be getting up and dancing, but you can have live entertainment as long as they're 6 feet away from your guests. within Philadelphia. And you are allowed, well, we're changing that to allow it to be outdoors because you can't technically have outdoor entertainment. There's legislation that could address that, but indoor entertainment is permitted in Philadelphia. Let's see, it doesn't look like the $145 million that was transferred from Workers' Comp Security Fund has been allocated. Any insight on how this will be used? Step one is convincing the Republicans to use it. They are not sure that it's legal for the transfer to happen, so we are in ongoing conversations with them about the $145 million. Our focus is, I, of course, think that our industry should get every dollar of it, but I think we need to recognize that gyms and other entities have also been impacted. So our hope is to get a large cut of it and have those conversations. That I've had some, and people are open to that. The question is convincing leadership that it's legal and using the money, and they have not done anything to that extent yet. One last question. I just got word that money's collected from Act 109 from July. Carl, you were running the gauntlet on questions today. We went from like one way all the way to the other. Money's collected from Act 109 from July through December. We're not that far from the prior year. And that for those of you that want to go down, you know, I won't spend too much time on history. Act 109 was a piece of legislation PRLA was able to pass that closed what we call the online travel company loophole. So it required online travel companies, Airbnb, VRB, Vrbo, as they call themselves now, all of them to have to remit the actual correct amount of occupancy tax on overnight accommodations. And we were able to dedicate all of those funds to tourism promotion within Pennsylvania. And Carl, the answer is yes. It's actually looks, we're only about $200,000 off from where we were in 2019, which is kind of surprising because for our hotels on the call, you guys are down, you know, 40, 50, 60, 70%. But it does look like as people are traveling, they tend to be more comfortable staying in some of these online home sharing rentals. So only $200,000 were off from last time, which is good for tourism. I think it just speaks to the fact that Pennsylvania needs to do a better job of encouraging people back to Pennsylvania and that our hotels are safe and people should be coming and staying there. Outdoor events, 25 people or 25%. And Ben, chip in here if I'm off. My read is outdoor events are 25 people, maximum of 25 people right now. Okay, Ben's nodding his head. I pulled up Ben's screen, so now I can know if I'm wrong. I saw on PPP's on Friday's P3 webinar, I went to verify because my bank disagrees. If I ask for under 150,000, I don't have to show my 25% loss yet. I was open 2 months in 2019 only, so don't even have a quarter. That is correct. If you are getting less than $150,000 for your second draw of P3, documentation is not required at the time of application for the P3, but you have to have it available when you apply for forgiveness. So you don't need to show it right now, but when you apply for forgiveness, you have to be prepared to show a 25% loss. Regarding the Philadelphia documents for reopening, should we be relying upon them now, or are we expecting updates today to the site? I've been checking and it's confusing. Yes, we're waiting for updates on that. We expect them to be done shortly, but right now, if you look at it, there is either they're in the process of updating or not, but there is a lot of contradictions between various documents on Philadelphia's site. So we expect hopefully a straightforward document of changes that are going to be taking effect beginning on the 16th, but that has not been updated yet as far as I know. Let's see. Any idea when indoor events? I think I answered that already. We don't know. We're pushing hard for it, but that there is, I mean, you think that some people don't like indoor dining. I mean, the state and Philadelphia hate events, just hate events. And just, we haven't gotten a clear answer on that. I mean, my hope is that it will happen. probably not before, I mean, definitely not before the end of the month. And if I were to guess, I would definitely hope for it by spring is what I would hope for. Thank you, Michael, for the thank you. Looks like Southeast Democratic senators are hosting a vaccine town hall with Dr. Levine and others at noon today. If anybody's interested, there's a link in the chat. For the new P3, can we apply for slightly less than what we calculate as the 3.5-month payroll cost? Yes, you can definitely apply for less. Or you could take the full 3.5, and if you don't spend it or use it all, you can give it back. But that 3.5 is your ceiling. But you can definitely apply for less, or like I say, take it and then pay back what you don't use. Can you apply for more than the 3.5? Wow, it's like I pre-answered the question. For more than the 3.5 of payroll, or is that the ceiling, even though you can use 60% for payroll and other 40 for utilities and rent? 3.5 is the ceiling if your NCIS code begins with 7.2. So that you cannot get more than that no matter what, which is why, as I mentioned before, we really do consider this to be a down payment for the bigger, larger recovery package the industry is going to need. Another 8 weeks or 24, depending on how long you spread it out for, of P3 is not going to save this industry, but it's going to get us through the next few weeks so we can get that larger package across the finish line. Thank you, PRLA rocks. Yay. And I'll give it another minute or two for questions. Oh, and then yes, actually, I do want to bring this up real quick. Allison, because Allison put this as a different topic, but I want to touch upon it. At Friday, January 15th at 11 a.m., the City of Pittsburgh and Urban Redevelopment Authority are hosting an informational webinar on federal funding for performance venues. Participants outside of Pittsburgh are welcome. And to that point, Allison, thank you again. The City of Pittsburgh did put out an FAQ document for their emergency paid leave. It's not all that different than what we expected, but I'm going to throw it in the chat box for anybody from Pittsburgh who needs that, because it is effective right now. That's Pittsburgh, not Allegheny County, Pittsburgh's emergency paid leave. I thought I was going to get a lot more P3 questions today. You guys. I knew I was going to get. All right, I'm ready. I'm ready for this question. Okay, you ready? The question is the 3.5 payroll yearly, monthly, or blank? So you can use 3 options to calculate the average monthly payroll. So stick with me. The first option, which is the one that I would probably say that 99.9% of you are going to use, is the average monthly payroll from 2019, because that's when you had the most employees. That's when you probably had the highest payroll. That's going to give you the most amount of funds. So that's one option. The other is the average monthly payroll from 2020. Or that's option 2, which I probably wouldn't suggest because you all didn't have high payrolls then. Or you can use the average monthly payroll for the 12-month period before you draw down the second P3. Again, it's a third option. I would say for those of you on the call, 2019, if you want to maximize the amount of loan that you are going to get, or P3 you're going to get, you're going to want to do the average monthly payroll from 2019.
All right, Melissa, I think we're back on our game this week. Last week felt a little.
Yes, and that applies only to, we are only in, well, that applies, the scenario is for first draw or second draw to draw down your P3, the 1, 2, and 3 scenario. So that can be for your first, and also if you want to use the amount you used for your first draw, you can just use that again and use pretty much the same application for the same amount for your second draw. How'd I do?
One more.
Oh, this applies only to second draw for first. Well, a first-time applicant would be a first draw, and a second draw wouldn't be a first-time applicant. I think that's the question. And then there's not, okay, there's not a place to total the other expenses. So when you're applying, you don't need to show your 60-40 split when you apply for the loan. You need to show your 60-40 use when you're asking for forgiveness. And if you get less than $150,000, that's a more straightforward application. So you don't need to say, I'm using, this is what I'm spending the other 40% on. You just have to show that's how you used it when you apply for forgiveness.
I'm afraid to talk. Every time I do, there's another question. See, it happened.
Okay, hold on. Okay. All right. Option three is goofy, but I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it again. Option 3 is you can use the average monthly pay for the 12-month period before you draw down the loan. So if you draw down the loan on February 1 of 2021, you could use January of 2021 back to January of 2020 as your 12-month rolling average. Or if the P3 goes till March 31st. So if you drew down on March 1st, you could do 12 months back from that. So you can either use calendar year 2019 average payroll payroll for calendar year 2020, or an average of the 12 months preceding when you draw down the loan. And then confusion with my lender, is it a max of 60% on payroll? So it's 3.5 times your payroll if you're a restaurant or a hotel. And then you can use 100% of the P3 on payroll if you want. You have to use at least 60% for payroll, but you can use 75, 80, 95, 100% for payroll, but you have to use at least 60. I really jinxed it when I said nobody has P3 questions at the end, didn't I? Yes, you can use it all for payroll. I'm like slowly easing away from the computer.
I know, I'm slowly unmuting myself.
Great job, Melissa, and thank you, Hope, for officiating today. Appreciate everyone attending, and we'll see you again next week.
Thanks, everyone. Stay safe.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good week.